He pulled over while I was running and said my name like he'd been carrying it around for years, waiting for the right moment to give it back to me. I was 3 miles into my morning run through the suburban streets of Westfield when the black SUV slowed down beside me, and when the window rolled down, I expected to be asked for directions or hit on by some random guy. What I didn't expect was to hear Natalie Chen spoken in a voice that made every muscle in my body freeze with recognition I couldn't quite place. The man behind the wheel was older, maybe early 40s, with graying hair and the kind of weathered face that suggested he'd spent years outdoors in difficult places. There was something familiar about his dark eyes, something that made my heart start racing for reasons that had nothing to do with running. Before I continue this, hit that subscribe button. I post one real story every single day. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? I'm always curious who my stories are reaching. Do I know you? I asked, pulling out my earbuds and trying to catch my breath. You wouldn't remember me. You were only 10 the last time I saw you. He put the SUV in park and looked at me with an intensity that made me take a step back from the curb. I'm Marcus. Marcus Sullivan. I was a friend of your father's. The name hit me like cold water. Marcus Sullivan. The name that had appeared in my father's phone records, in the police reports, in the newspaper articles about the hiking accident that killed him 15 years ago. You were with him, I said, and it wasn't a question. When he died, something flickered across Marcus's face. Pain, maybe, or guilt. Yes, I was with him. We stared at each other across the distance between the sidewalk and his car, two strangers connected by the worst day of my life, and I felt something shift in the morning air around us. What do you want? I asked, though part of me already knew the answer would be complicated. To talk. To tell you things about that day that you deserve to know. Marcus ran a hand through his hair. To apologize for taking 15 years to find the courage to face you. I can't. I have to get to work, and I don't. I can't just talk about this on the side of the road. Then let me drive you home. Or we could get coffee. Somewhere public, somewhere you'd feel safe. Safe. The word hung between us, and I realized he understood exactly how surreal this moment was for me. How did you find me? I've been looking for you for 3 years. Ever since I moved back to the area. Marcus's voice was quiet, careful. I knew your father would want me to check on you, to make sure you were okay. I'm okay. Are you? The question was so gentle, so genuinely concerned, that I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes. I run this route every morning, I said instead of answering. For the past 2 years, same time, same path. You could have approached me anytime. I've been trying to work up the courage. For 2 years. For 15 years. The honesty in his voice made my chest tighten. This man had been carrying something about my father's death for 15 years, and now he was here, looking at me like I was both the answer to his prayers and his worst nightmare. There's a coffee shop called Luna's about 6 blocks from here, I said finally. Do you know it? I'll find it. Give me an hour to shower and change. And Marcus. Yeah, this doesn't mean I'm ready to hear whatever you think I need to know. I understand. I watched him drive away, and then I stood on the sidewalk for 10 minutes trying to process what had just happened. Marcus Sullivan. The last person to see my father alive. The man who had carried my dad's body out of the mountains and sat through the police interviews and disappeared from my life like he'd never existed. And now he was back, wanting to tell me things I wasn't sure I was ready to hear. An hour later, I sat across from Marcus in a corner booth at Luna's, nursing a latte and trying not to notice how his presence seemed to fill the entire space. Up close, I could see that his eyes were the same dark green my father's had been, and there was something about the way he held himself that reminded me of the old photos I had of my dad from his military days. You look like him, Marcus said, as if reading my thoughts. People used to tell me that when I was younger. You have his eyes. And his stubborn chin. Despite everything, I almost smiled. You remember what his chin looked like? I remember everything about your father, Natalie. He was my best friend for 8 years. Then why didn't I know about you? Why weren't you at the funeral? Why did you disappear? Marcus was quiet for a moment, staring into his coffee like it held answers he was afraid to find. Because I was a coward, he said finally. Because I couldn't face you and your mother knowing that I was supposed to protect him, and I failed. What happened up there? That's That's complicated. Everything about my father's death was complicated. The police said it was an accident, that he fell during a difficult climb. But there were always things that didn't add up. Marcus looked up at me, and I saw something in his expression that made my heart start racing again. What kind of things? Like why he was climbing alone when the reports said you were with him. Like why his equipment was found in 3 different locations. Like why it took the rescue team 6 hours to find his body when you were supposedly right there when it happened. Natalie. Like why you gave 3 different statements to the police about what time the accident occurred. Marcus closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, they were bright with something that looked like relief mixed with terror. You've been investigating. For 10 years. Ever since I turned 18 and could access the police reports myself. What do you think happened? I leaned forward, studying his face. I think my father didn't die in a climbing accident. I think something else happened up there, and you've been covering it up for 15 years. Marcus was quiet for so long that I thought he wasn't going to answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Your father saved my life that day. What? We weren't climbing, Natalie. We were running. The coffee shop suddenly felt too small, too warm, too loud. Running from what? From people who wanted us dead. The words hit me like a physical blow. What are you talking about? Marcus looked around the coffee shop, checking to make sure no one was listening, then leaned forward across the small table. Your father and I worked together. Not in construction, like he told your mother. We worked for a private security firm that specialized in difficult situations. You were mercenaries. We were trying to do the right thing in places where the right thing wasn't always legal or safe. I stared at this man who was systematically dismantling everything I thought I knew about my father. That last job, Marcus continued, we uncovered something we weren't supposed to see. Evidence of weapons trafficking, human trafficking, things that went all the way to the top of the organization we were working for. And they found out. They found out. Your father and I had evidence that could have brought down a lot of very powerful, very dangerous people. So they sent a team to eliminate us. In the mountains. We thought we could lose them in the wilderness, get to a safe extraction point. But they caught up to us at Devil's Ridge. The name sent chills down my spine. Devil's Ridge was where my father's body had been found. There was a firefight, Marcus said, his voice growing distant. Your father was hit. Not fatally, but bad enough that he couldn't climb anymore. And we both knew they were closing in. What would you do if you were in my place? Tell me in the comments. I felt like the world was tilting around me. Marcus, what are you saying? I'm saying your father made a choice. He gave me the evidence, photos, documents, everything we'd collected, and told me to run. Told me to get to safety and make sure the truth got out. And you left him. He made me leave him. So they killed him. Marcus shook his head. That's what I thought for 15 years. That's what I've been living with, the guilt of leaving him to die. But 3 months ago, I finally found the courage to go back to Devil's Ridge. To see the exact spot where I left him. Marcus looked at me directly. And I found something that changed everything. What? Evidence that your father made it off that ridge alive. The coffee shop went completely silent around me, like someone had hit a mute button on the entire world. That's impossible. They found his body. They found a body. But Natalie, your father had training in survival, in creating false identities, in disappearing when he needed to. What if he survived that day and decided the only way to protect you and your mother was to stay dead? I couldn't breathe. You're saying my father is alive? I'm saying it's possible. I'm saying the evidence suggests he might have staged his death to protect his family from people who would have used you as leverage against him. Show me. What? Show me the evidence. Show me whatever you found that makes you think my father might be alive. Marcus reached into his jacket and pulled out a manila envelope. These are photos I took at Devil's Ridge 3 months ago. And these, he handed me a second envelope, are copies of the documents your father died to protect. The evidence that brought down the trafficking ring. I opened the first envelope with shaking hands. The photos showed a hidden cache built into the rocks at Devil's Ridge, and inside the cache, items that made my heart stop. My father's watch. His wedding ring. A letter addressed to me in his handwriting. Oh my God. The letter is for you. I haven't read it. With trembling fingers, I opened the letter. My father's familiar handwriting filled the page. My dearest Natalie, if you're reading this, it means Marcus kept his promise to find you. It means you're old enough to handle the truth about why I had to disappear. I'm alive, sweetheart. I've been alive this whole time, watching from a distance, making sure you and your mother were safe. The organization that wanted us dead still exists, and as long as they think I'm alive, you would never be safe. But now you're grown. You're strong. And the evidence Marcus and I collected has finally brought them down. It's safe for me to come home. If you want to see me, if you can forgive me for the 15 years of grief I put you through, tell Marcus yes. He knows how to find me. I love you more than life itself. Dad. I was sobbing before I finished reading, and I felt Marcus's hand cover mine across the table. Natalie, I'm so sorry. I know this is overwhelming. Is he really alive? After 15 years, is my father really alive? Yes. He's been living in Canada under an assumed name. He's been writing you letters he never sent, following your life from a distance, waiting for the day it would be safe to come home. I looked at this man who had carried the weight of my father's secret for 15 years, who had let me believe he was a coward when he was actually the bravest person I'd ever met. Why now? Why are you telling me this now? Because the last of the trafficking organization was arrested 2 weeks ago. Because your father has been cleared of all charges and it's finally safe for him to resume his life. Marcus squeezed my hand. And because he's been waiting in a hotel room across town for 3 days, hoping you'd want to see him. He's here? In Westfield. He's here. I stared at Marcus, at this man who had just given me back my father, and I felt something shift in my chest. Something that had nothing to do with family revelations and everything to do with the way he was looking at me. Marcus, I said carefully, how long have you been watching me run? What do you mean? You said you've been trying to work up the courage for 2 years. That means you've been watching me, learning my routine, maybe even protecting me without me knowing it. Marcus's cheeks flushed slightly. Your father asked me to watch over you, to make sure you stayed safe while he couldn't be there. And what? And somewhere along the way, watching over me became something more complicated than just fulfilling a promise to your best friend. Marcus was quiet for a moment, and I saw him struggle with how much truth he was willing to share. Natalie, you're 25 years old. You're beautiful and intelligent, and you have your whole life ahead of you. That's not an answer. You're also the daughter of my best friend, and I'm 18 years older than you, and this day is already complicated enough without me adding my completely inappropriate feelings to the mix. What if I told you the feelings weren't one-sided? Marcus stared at me. What? What if I told you that for the past 2 years, I've had this sense of being watched, being protected, and instead of feeling scared, I felt safe? What if I told you that seeing you this morning felt like recognition, not surprise? Natalie, what if I told you that you pulling over to talk to me was the most right thing that's happened to me in years? Marcus closed his eyes. Then I'd say we have a lot to figure out after you see your father. Is that a yes? That's a let's take this one impossible thing at a time. I smiled, and it felt like the first real smile I'd had in 15 years. Can you take me to him? To my dad. Are you ready? I've been ready for 15 years. Marcus drove me to the hotel where my father was waiting, and when I knocked on room 412, the door opened to reveal a man who looked exactly like I remembered but older, grayer, with tears already streaming down his face. Natalie, he whispered, and then I was in his arms, and 15 years of grief and confusion and anger dissolved into pure, overwhelming love. We talked for hours, my father and Marcus and I, about the past 15 years, about the choices that had been made, about the future we could finally have together. And, through it all, I was aware of Marcus watching me with an expression that suggested our conversation at the coffee shop had been just the beginning. Before I go, thank you. These stories are real. They're mine. And I share one every day. If you want to hear more, subscribe. 6 months later, my father walked me down the aisle at my wedding to Marcus. It was unconventional, maybe even controversial, but it was also exactly right. Marcus had spent 15 years protecting me from a distance, and now he gets to love me up close. And every morning when we run together through the streets of Westfield, I remember that sometimes the most important conversations start with someone pulling over and saying your name like they've been waiting their whole life to give it back to you.